my very great pleasure to be part of a panel that is going to switch things up a little. So we've talked and discussed over the last day and a half Australian education institutions and Australian EdTech, and we've been thinking about the impact being made here in Australia as well as globally. And now it is a wonderful opportunity for us to learn from others. We are joined here by two terrific gentlemen who come respectively to us from India and Singapore. And we're going to talk about the future of assessment. And joining me on the panel is Associate Professor Sreejith, if I said that properly, Govindan, who is not just an Associate Professor but also Deputy Registrar Evaluation at Manipal Academy of Higher Education in India. He works both in research and teaching in the Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor of Surgery, the Bachelor of Dental Surgery and Allied Health, and, as if that wasn't busy enough, he works in the Office of Registrar Evaluation, where he's involved in facilitating and monitoring all of the student assessments, certification and verification processes across the various programs offered by the university. So firstly, please join me in welcoming Sreejith. And joining us from LittleMORE Innovation Labs, based out of Singapore, but definitely with a global perspective, is Srikanth Ganesan, who is their CEO. And Srikanth brings over 23 years' experience in the tech industry to his role as both founder and CEO of LittleMORE Innovation Labs. They were founded in 2013, and their aim is to transform paper-based examinations using disruptive technology-driven innovation, which is paperless. And firstly, welcome to you as well, Srikanth. Please join me. And now Srikanth is here with one of his colleagues, Ravish, who, if you are interested, oh, there he is. I was looking for him on this side of the room. He's over there. This one you'll have to do virtually as a follow-up on LinkedIn or by email if you're watching online. But if you're here in the room and want to know a bit more about the LittleMORE product, which we'll partly be discussing today, Ravish will give you a bit of a demo over afternoon tea. So with that out of the way, Sreejith, I wonder for our Australian audience who may not be familiar with your university, Manipal, can you tell us a bit about it and your role as the registrar there?
Okay, sure. Thank you, Clare, for that wonderful introduction. And hello, everyone. Yes, about Manipal, it's very old university. We started our first program way back in 1953, one of the first private medical schools in the country. Manipal is actually situated in the coastal Karnataka. Karnataka is a southern state in India. And we became as a deemed to be university way back in the late 90s. Now we have a special status under the Indian universities given by the Ministry of Education of Government of India. It's called Institutions of Eminent Status, which is there only for very few higher education institutions in the country. And in Manipal, yes, we have more than around 24 separate higher education institution under the university within the university campus, and we have few campuses, one in Bangalore, one in Jaipur, that is in the northern side of India, and one in Jamshedpur, that is in the eastern side of India. And besides that, we have few campuses in Malaysia, Dubai, and even in Antigua. In Manipal per se, like our home campus, we have around 25 to 30,000 students like distributed in various programs. Like it ranges around the number, I would say around roughly around 400 different programs, but the major ones are medical, dental, engineering and management.
Okay, and I'm just going to pause there, just let that sink in. So we're having a discussion here in Australia about the size of our universities and if we need more diversity. And I think you just rattled off and said we have 24 campuses and that's within India, and then we have a few in Malaysia, and right? And again, so thinking about scale, it's a considerable undertaking, and it's great to have someone eminent from an institute which has been recognised as eminent by the Indian government. And now you've had students, and the reason that we've got LittleMORE here is you've had students using their platform now for a number of years as well.
Yeah, we are using their platform for the past 7 years to conduct all the descriptive types of examination, because in India still we follow the descriptive essay type questions. We have not totally moved to MCQs. I know that the world is coming back. Those who have moved to MCQ now, they are also slowly coming back to the descriptive type of examination. So we are slightly ahead of the globe. I feel like we are still following the descriptive and move to a digital based platform. I think we'll talk about more that a little later.
We did, but I'm just going to translate because you're being too technological for me. So MCQ is multi-choice questions. Yes. Okay, sorry, very good. I'm just keeping up with the lingo. All right, and now Srikanth, can you share a bit about LittleMORE Innovation Labs, your role, what is the purpose of the labs?
Thank you, Claire. It's a pleasure being here, and thank you very much for your lovely introduction. LittleMORE started as a research and development organization. I used to be the CTO of an assessment company before I started LittleMORE. So when I was in the assessment space, what I realized is all the exams and assessments were being computer-based tests, and there are a lot of limitations which are there with computer-based assessments, right? So you cannot draw, you cannot write, you cannot deduct equations, you cannot write formulas. If I was a medical student, if I'm going to be assessed on multiple choice questions, then we are limiting the scope of the testing the true ability of the student, right? It can be guesswork, right? So, and also in a country like India, we have about 300 million students studying in the system, and competition is very, very severe, right? Because there might be one place available for about 1 million students to apply. That's kind of competition which is there. So along with competition comes malpractices, right? In most of the countries, we would have heard about malpractices being seen rampantly in exams specifically, and it's a different industry altogether. So how do we curb malpractices? How do we bring in the element of writing digitally? These are all the key points that we were trying to address when I started LittleMORE. So if you have to give a paper-like experience of writing in a digital form, it meant that we have to have something like a tablet PC, right? And you're going to be disrupting a system which has been there for about 100 plus years, introduced by the British, right? If you're going to say you're going to eliminate the paper, you're going to be using the device to replace the paper, that's a big, tall ask, right? So we had to start as a research and development setup where we had to give the experience of writing on paper. So if you look at this is the device that we built. So the glass is not a normal Gorilla glass, right? It's got a paper-like texture, right? It's a chemically etched Gorilla glass, so it gives a writing experience of writing on paper. If you look at the device also, it's very, very thin. It gives, I'm sure Mel can talk about it later. She's a student. But the thing is, it's very thin. It's as thin as a book sheet of answers, answer booklet, right? It's about 1.5 mm thick. So you can sit on a table and write for about 3 hours without any injury to the palm or the wrist. So it's been ergonomically designed. So that's why we started as a research and development setup, and we continue to progress in the research. Of course, we have built the first version of the device, but we do plan to get into generative AI and stuff like that. We will continue to be a research setup, right?
Sure. So you've identified a problem which is higher education learning at scale, and even within that scale, demand for entry into courses and institutions is highly competitive. There are here in Australia. It's something that we're trying to deal with. Issues around academic integrity, and how do you develop technology that's going to meet some of those problems, and still allow for a more authentic assessment experience, so it's not just resulting back to the multi-choice tests. So I wanted to ask Sreejith, if you can, you and I were talking just before we hopped up on stage, and I've spent a little bit of time in India, and certainly pre-COVID it wasn't very strong on digital and online as a way of educating students. It had a more traditional approach. So can you talk to us about why you and Manipal decided to move? What was it that that saw you take steps in this direction?
Okay, well, that's an interesting question. If you see like Manipal University, like now it's called as Manipal Academy of Higher Education, our vision statement says like, actually we are striving to become one of the global leaders in human development, education and healthcare. So these are the three core areas. And we believe in integrity, quality and even transparency. So when the entire world is moving towards technologically enabled education system, I think we started thinking little earlier when we see the country as a context. Somewhere around in 2010-12, that time we started thinking of moving ahead with technologically enabled assessment practices. So we started with like scanning our descriptive type of essay questions with the help of a software solution, and the scanned images were evaluated by the teachers in a centralized format. But there we were not getting rid of the paper business. We were still following writing on the paper, but only scanning it and evaluating on screen. But later, Mr. Srikanth and his team came out to us to demonstrate the product. At one site itself, we liked it. It was like love at first sight. So we liked it, not only like the administrative level people, even the other major stakeholders like faculty members also, they liked it. Why? Because like we realized that this is a solution where we can ensure the student experience, because we didn't find any difference in writing on this tab and the paper when we tried out by ourselves. So we immediately accepted it and tried out with a small group of students in one of the medical colleges. And also it helped us to ensure the transparency in our process, because everything is available at the back end in logs. So whatever the student does, whatever activity student does during the examination, that is being captured. So nobody could question it. And that ensures the authenticity also on this product. So that's how we moved and decided to move on to this technologically enabled devices.
Brilliant. So we've spent a day and a half talking about closer collaboration. Now we hear it's romance between EdTech and Higher Education Institute. Love at first sight. That's what's going to get us over the line. In terms, I'm just teasing, but it's a great. I got a sense of appreciation in the room that when things work right between the institution and the technology product, that's a really important moment. So you've got a great solution. It's really going to meet your needs, but you've now got to convince the university to move away from a paper-based system that you've been using and relying on and people are comfortable and familiar with. Can you talk us through some of that change and transition process?
Yeah, of course. Like we didn't jump into this new system immediately. At first step, they demonstrated the same thing to many faculty colleagues. Once we took them into confidence, we tried out with our internal examinations at one particular college, one of the medical institutions, where mainly the Malaysian students were studying, thinking that they are more tech savvy than Indian at that point of time. They immediately accepted it, but there was some apprehension with some of the students, but because of various reasons. But we could convince them and take them into confidence. And once they started using it, by word of mouth, the message was passed on to other group of students. And we didn't start this process in between of a program. we ensured that we are starting this process right from the very first year, the moment students enter the college. What we did was we have a regular orientation program for students as well as their parents. It's a formal process for every program. So we introduced, their people came down initially and they introduced the product to the parents, to the students upfront, like in the very first day of their college day. And we also, the company people only came down to give them the demonstration of the product and allowed them to try it out, writing multiple times on this device. And also we left these devices in our library and asked the students to come down at any point of time and scribble it and practice it. And students were very much confident enough to write on it. So they very well accepted it, and we didn't have any issues to continue with the process. And we are still continuing and expanding even to our postgraduate level programs, which was not there in this device. But now even our medical postgraduate, we are planning to start from this year writing on this particular device.
So that's a really good example of what we were discussing yesterday about the importance of thinking through your pilot, who are the students to get involved, which particular is the right cohort, and thinking through all of those facets. And Srikanth, I wonder if you can talk about, from your perspective, your side of that collaboration to make sure that this rollout went smoothly.
Thank you, Dr. Sreejith. It was like what Clare said, it's a collaborative approach, right? So it's not like we got a technology and it can be implemented from day one. It's not like buying an iPad and starting using that, because in an examination kind of a scenario, the criticality of the data, the criticality of change management, there are multiple stakeholders who are involved in accepting a solution like this. So collaborating with the client is very, very important. So what we did is we tried to understand what is the psyche of the faculty members. How are they going to change? How will they adapt to this new technology? How are they going to change the platform, right? So they're all very, very critical inputs for us. And most importantly is going to be the students, because they're going to be the final consumers of the product, because they have to write their exams, because a medical student is already under a lot of stress when they are preparing for the exam, because they have to study months in advance to write an exam, right? So on top of it, we're going to say it's a new device that you're going to be writing the exam, and you have to learn some software, you're going to gain the experience of writing on it. So adding more challenges to the student, which normally is not acceptable, right? So it's very important that we collaborate with the examination section of the university and get to meet all the stakeholders in advance. And for example, the orientation session which we conduct for the students, not only for the students but also for the parents. The acceptance has to come from within the family, right? So we started from there, and then we go on to every faculty member, then also to the administration staff as to how to measure the productivity, the efficiency. There are a lot of things to go along with it. So collaboration has to start with the examination section of every university. That's been our experience. And of course, the top management has to have the vision to look 10 years down the line, right? Collaborating, educating the use of technology in a space like this is very, very important. And that's where I keep saying again and again, I would say Manipal University is one of the most corporatized university in India. So it's easy, it's like doing an enterprise sale, so it's like selling an enterprise solution. So it's very easy to communicate, it's very easy to drive this kind of a solution top down. So that's the answer to your question.
Okay, great answer. I wonder what I won't reflect on our universities and their 10-year plans. We'll instead go to Amanda. Has a very, very good question. She says, and it's going from the high level and the strategic down to a very important point. Australian students generally have poor handwriting because they're now so used to doing everything on a computer. Have you found that to be an issue in getting your students to handwrite their answers on this device? So I'm happy for either of you who wants to answer. How are Indian and Malaysian students, with all this handwriting? What's their handwriting like?
Yeah, I would like to answer. I was in fact just discussing with Srikanth just a few minutes back. with respect to her handwriting, because he was looking for someone who can write a good handwriting, and she finally wrote it. What I'm trying to say is, like, students used to have some apprehension when they write in the paper. Like, they try to make it as beautiful as possible, but finally end up in very difficult type of writing. But with this pad, what we have found as a teacher, as an evaluator of the examination, we found that some students are even writing in very big letters. They realize that their handwriting is not as good as that, or not legible. But I don't know how they were writing before in a paper, but they were never writing in a paper with a big handwriting. But in this tab, we are seeing that very big handwriting, because they wanted to ensure that they are writing it very clearly. So that opportunity, that they could get it through this, even though they could not make it very beautiful, but it is legible, and as an evaluator we could evaluate it very clearly. And other problem with Malaysian students, they all write, they used to like, we all had the ruled papers for the paper-based exam. So they used to fit 2 lines in between 2 lines. They like very small handwriting, especially the Malaysian students. So we used to find it very difficult. At some point we used to think that we need to use a hand lens to read it out. But with this, what's the advantage of this particular device? What we found, like, students can choose unruled paper. They can choose ruled paper with different widths. So they are choosing the appropriate background page for them to write, and they started writing in that. So that's another advantage what we are finding from as a faculty point of view.
Okay. Srikanth, I wonder, we've got a flood of questions now coming in. Everybody's focused on handwriting. How does this work? David asks, which people from which backgrounds or cultures have you found are the most adaptive to these digital exams and devices? And do you have any sense of people who found it more challenging?
Well, it's been, I would say, the more academic the student is. When I mean more academic, it's like more focused on the score. They would be a bit more resistant to change, because they already are in a comfort zone, writing on paper and getting good scores, So for them, a change would mean a risk, which would mean, can the device kind of reduce my score? That's something which we have seen. But those fears have been unfounded, because we normally, when a student says, I find writing on paper better, so what we do is we give them a sheet of paper and we give them the device, ask them to try out on both, and show them it's the same. It's not even similar, it's the same, right? So culturally, we find all students to be more adaptive. In terms of the socio-economic background, we had some apprehension. We thought the students who had access to tablets, mobile smartphones would be more adaptable. But we were very surprised when we saw students who have never touched a smartphone adapt to this. So we call the new generation of students the digital natives, right? So it takes about 15 minutes for a student to get adapted to this new system. So to answer your question, Clare, I think it's only a question of perception.
Okay. A couple more questions, and then we are going to go to a big one at the end. There's so many questions coming through. Can students type on it? No, it's handwriting. I think when I've had a little play with it, with my very messy handwriting, but I'll let either of you answer. Can you type on it?
To say yes or no, yes, you can type.
Oh, you can.
Okay, but
right.
Does be typed using a stylus?
Aha.
We don't support touch, because we see that the touch technology interferes with writing during an exam.
Yes. Okay. And how have you managed the scalability of use of the product to students? Does it require students to have individual access? Is it one per student? How do you manage that?
So this is a very interesting question, and also the most important question. It's got to do the economics. So what we do in Manipal University, for example, each device is used by about 6 students, right? So let's say the cost of the device is $400. It works for 4 years, and it's depreciated over 4 years. The cost of the device per student per year will just be about $20, right? So the more the number of students who can use the device, the lower the cost, right? So to answer your question, it can be used by as many students as you want. All that needs to be done is the calendaring of the exam schedule needs to be optimized.
Right, so you've got to get do a bit of thinking around scheduling of it, but actually it is a device that can be used by multiple students. Now, I'm conscious of time. There are a couple more questions. If they are from people in the room, you will need to take them up in afternoon tea break over coffee. Because I wanted to talk to the future, I know I'm supposed to weave in the title of I'm not very good at doing this, EdTech as a bridge to the future. Instead, because I'm a rebel, I wanted to ask about generative AI. Is that going to blow up this kind of technology? Will we not need it? Everything will be so different. What's your sense? I mean, generative AI is a live issue in terms of academic integrity and assessment. So I'm not sure who wants to go first. Either of you?
I'll just I'll just start with this, and he can continue because he's a tech person. From the university perspective, yes, the chat GPT was an issue in our university as well when it was introduced, because we have a lot of programs where the paperwork, the assignments and the final submission of term purpose and other things as an integral part of our summative examinations. So those places we have now taken a different plan of action, like the students have to submit the assignment, but at the same time they have to face a Viva Voce. And the teachers were specifically asked to question the students based on the written content. So if it is created by a chat GPT, definitely the student is not going to answer it quite well. So we could differentiate, and we are practicing it now since last year.
Brilliant.
So that's only for our term paper examinations.
Brilliant.
So so how we look at technology in education, it should be useful for the educational institution, which means the faculty members and the students, right? Whether it be generative AI or chat GPT, or you might call it anything, the ultimate use case is it going to be beneficial, right? What is it going to improve? So from that perspective, we see the role of generative AI changing the landscape of exams in the next 30 years. So we are embarking on a research and development project, most likely collaborating with Australian educational institutions, where we are working on some new products, which will mean the grading of answer responses for descriptive type of answers will be partially done by the system and partially done by the teacher, right? So at some point of time it can go fully automated, but we believe the first few years it's going to be in a hybrid model where everything is going to be automated, right? The next thing is what we are working on is, can the questions also be set automatically and intelligently by the system itself through generative AI. So if you tell me there's a curriculum for this subject and there's a textbook which needs to be referred to, the system should be able to pick up the question and phrase the question for that specific assessment, right? So this is what we are heading towards. So we hope to have a working version in the next 3 years' time.
Brilliant. So we've got both a focus today on more authentic assessment, asking students to respond to their assessment tasks that they've done, and some forward thinking to the future about how generative AI can be built into both teaching and assessment. Gentlemen, it has been fascinating to speak with you. Thank you very much. You both travelled a long distance to be here with us. We've learnt a lot from you. Thank you very much for your time. Please join with me in thanking Sreejith and Srikanth, and don't forget Lavish is out there if you want to have a chat to him. Thank you.